Welcome to Bullish on Business. We just cut right through the noise and get straight to what actually will drive growth, revenue, and real results. And I'm your host, Rose Odette, founder, CEO, and relentless advocate for building businesses that don't just survive, they scale, dominate, and create lasting impact. Well, today's conversation hits right at the center of what's changing in business right now. We're living in a world flooded with automation, AI, and endless tools. But here's the truth most people miss. Technology doesn't build trust. People do. Joining me today is Lauren Kroells, operations manager and marketing strategist over at Colliver Technology Group. Lauren specializes in taking super complex systems and making them work cleaner, smarter, and more efficiently. So companies can really actually grow without breaking under their own weight. We're going to dive into the human side of scaling, why most AI strategies fail, how operational discipline creates freedom, and what it really takes to stay authentic in a world that's becoming increasingly automated. If you're serious about scaling your business without losing your edge or your customers' trust, more importantly, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. How you doing today, Lauren?
Good. Hi, Rose. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here and I'm thankful that you had me on today and I'm excited to chat through these things. Like you mentioned, CTG is a marketing and automation support agency located in Traverse City here, and we specialize in virtual events and Google Workspace tools. So I'm excited to get into it.
That's what drew me to you. You're using advanced technology, but you're still using the Google Workspace.
Yeah.
Most everyone uses that. So
Yep.
we're going to hear some things today that you might be able to take action on right away.
Yep.
And so let's get into the very first question, which will highlight and tighten really this whole conversation. Let's talk about that big shift. Lauren, let's get started here. Why do people buy from people actually becoming more important than, let's say, a funnel?
Yeah. Yeah. So that is like a classic saying. You hear it around. People buy from people. And I think with automation becoming even more relevant and AI tools everywhere, we're going to really see that drive more impact because we've we've kind of taken a funny shift where it started with a website or something you're on. It's like, are you human? Select the images that contain a bicycle. And now it's kind of the reverse where we're on a website and we're like, is there a human back there? Or is this all just powered by AI and just made up based on who I am? So I think that we're definitely going to see an increase in people wanting to be able to engage with a human or at least know that there's someone in the background that if they need help or want to problem solve something or chat through, we know that people are usually the shortest path, the path of least resistance when we're in a rut or if we need help urgently. So yeah.
Exactly. Trying to explain over and over and over again to a chatbot can become so frustrating. And I
Yeah.
just start typing representative,
Yeah.
representative.
Yep. And so I think that if there are companies that make sure that there's someone there, or if there are companies on the other side who are purely relying on automation, I think they're going to see those shifts reflecting based on the trust piece that you'd mentioned earlier that
Well,
they're on those
that
paths.
is a great observation about this big shift. Now let's talk about trust versus automation. Like you say, we're seeing AI everywhere. Where do you think businesses are crossing the line from really people went to the chatbot for efficiency, maybe speed to get those answers out, but there's a moment in time when you lose that trust. Where is that line in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think that it really depends on the person and the problem. I think if it's an urgent matter, working with the chatbot, like you said, it can be faster, but if it's a little bit more complex, the quicker that you can get to a representative and even get on the phone to be heard, I feel like a lot of times too, if someone's having trouble, whether it's a platform or isn't happy with the service, they don't necessarily need a logical solution that the AI is going to configure. They mostly just want to be heard and have their voice be a part of the conversation and kind of talk to someone about their experience and hopefully find a solution that works best for them.
That is so true. And the one thing I think is critical for that, and this is a, an advice for those that are going to have a representative handy, make sure that that representative, in my opinion, can go off script. The other day, I was working with Network Solutions, and I will say their name, and the person, and I was talking to human, I know I was. And she would not drop off that prescribed script.
Yeah.
And it was almost more frustrating because I can forgive a robot for not deviating from a script, but if you do get to a human, make sure that they have the ability to be a human.
Yeah. Yeah.
That because that I lost little trust there too. And
Yeah.
nothing is
And
more frustrating than,
exactly.
doing the whole bicycle thing or the bus thing or the railroad
Mhm.
track or whatever it is, and you have to do it like 15 times. What is that about?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like,
Yeah, the
okay.
frustration piece is an
Oh my
immediate
gosh.
breaker. So if you have an AI or you're using AI for content, I think it's great. And I think I have a tempered view on it. I love what it's able to do in terms of scaling and efficiency. But if you're going to use it, take the extra step to make sure that it's high quality and that it represents your brand voice and that it actually provides solutions. If you're using I know we're kind of talking about chatbots here, but with even content or anything, making sure use it to scale, but make sure that you set it up initially to have your have it still provide value. What would you say if you were talking to your client and they came to you with that problem? You can put that in the chatbot. You can make sure that it is tailored to your voice and your messaging so that they do feel like they found a solution or they're talking to someone real or that you might understand them a little bit more.
And does Google Workspace provide to us the ability to put in our perspective, like our point of view or our voice?
Yeah.
Really?
So one tool that I love within Google Workspace that we've been using for a little bit now is called Notebook LM. So it's up in just your little hamburger style thing in Google. You drop down. It's called Notebook LM. And this language model is unique because it only relies on the sources you provide or you select. So you have the ability to attach a document that has your brand guidelines and your voice and even anything else specific to the project that would be helpful for them to understand. And then you can use the chatbot that's in the middle, and it also has the ability to generate different pieces of content. But what is so special is that it's not going to make up information that you didn't give it. It's going to focus purely on the sources. You can add multiple, you can link websites, YouTube videos, anything really, but
Wow.
it's only going to focus on what you provide and what you've selected when you're prompting it. So, this is helpful when you are generating copy or if you want to create a script for your chatbot on your website. You can use this to really keep that focus and keep that uniqueness around your brand and your voice without falling into the sea of sameness of AI and ChatGPT and sounding like everyone else.
Well, you bring something to the table here that I think a lot of our audience may have never been aware of before, and that will beg the question, is this what Culver does, or is this something that you're willing that you do, or are you able to advise clients on how to leverage this? I think is that something that you guys offer, or is this something that you use and you're giving us as guidance as an expert in that field?
Yeah, I would say that's guidance. We use it when we can. I think it's helpful for that specificity. If you're looking for something truly unique, I would use this. If you're doing more research based or you don't exactly know what you're looking for yet, some of the more broader chatbots or the chat like ChatGPT, those can be helpful as well. Um, Another tip, if you are going to be using if we're talking about Google, is if you're working within Google and you're trying to problem solve something within Google Tools, is to then use Google's Gemini. So it seems obvious, but the language model associated with the workspace that you're in, I think is going to provide better results for the solutions you're looking for versus using, say, Copilot to solve for Google or vice versa. You're going to find it to be a better experience if you use the
Excellent.
same
That's
backend.
that's like you say, that's obvious. But if I'm used to ChatGPT and then
Mm-hmm.
I try to get ChatGPT to work inside of Google, that's probably counterproductive. And those are such good guidance. If somebody has a question, I know this isn't your core business. You're more of a marketing, webinar enablement, and so many other things. But if they have a question, are you able to take a question?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I'd love to chat
Okay.
through anything with anyone if they're facing issues or trying to use Google a little bit more efficiently.
Okay, we'll
There's a
put
lot.
that in the chat in the notes in the show notes. So
Yeah,
let's talk
please.
about the red flag effect, which I've never heard of before. You said that AI raises hackles. What is specifically triggers that reaction in customers, and how do companies avoid it?
Yeah.
I know I
So,
get my hackles up, but I don't know why. Maybe you can tell me what triggers me.
yeah, so this was something that a friend to many in Traverse City, Bill Palladino, had said to me one time. He was like, yeah, AI kind of raises the hackles. And I hadn't heard that yet. And when he said it, it stuck with me because it's true. It's where you read something and nothing's incorrect, but you can just tell that it's a little off or that something's off. We don't know what. With our human eye, we look at it and everything's grammatically correct. The sentence makes sense, but it just doesn't feel like it should. And
Hmm.
so we get that tingly sensation where it kind of raises the hairs on the back of your neck and it doesn't sit just right. And so you asked how to avoid it. And I think it's the human element that we keep coming back to is using using your brain for lack of a better term before, during, or after using AI. If you want to use something like Notebook LM, that means a lot of your brain power is going to be upfront, providing it the context that it needs to give you the results that you want. If you're using, again, just using the example of ChatGPT or a normal chatbot, um, make sure that if you're going through a process, tailor it to your voice as you're conversing with it. So that would be during. Or after, you want it to just spit out something really quick, go through that copy with a fine tooth comb and make sure that there are those elements of your personality or your business's personality, or there are minor tweaks that you can make to just appeal to the human side of your audience.
Yeah, I think that is so good before, during, and after. What a great you know, method to make sure that your voice isn't lost in the whatever the AI slop that
Yeah.
they call it these days. And you know, I I really am I'm an optimistic and a very naive person. And so, and very, I'm never cynical and I'm never skeptical. So I'm
Mhm.
naive. And so that's who I am as a person. I'm a Cancer, so maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'm very naive. I'm not cynical and I'm not skeptical. So I love this stuff. I swallow it a lot, like what do they say? Hook, line, and sinker. I
Yeah.
I really do fall for this stuff. And so it's hard for me to feel like it's AI slop. And maybe it's my age because I've worked for years and years and years trying to create what AI can do in
Yeah.
like seconds. And so I'm still in awe. But whereas I see Generation Millennial and all of those, they have very little tolerance. I believe and this is just more philosophical maybe, but I believe, but Bill's my generation, so I think it's, just my personality type. I am super forgiving because I know how hard it is to do all the work that AI does
Yeah.
without its assistance. I mean, I'm still in awe, I think. Um, because
Yeah.
of all that AI can do. So when I could run across people that are like, I disdain AI or I think it's AI slop, I just think, oh my gosh, give it a break. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know I'm not like everybody. I know there's a lot of people and my generation and my type of person is probably very rare, but um, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I think I agree with you entirely. And I think that if it comes down to the purpose of what you're putting out there. So there are there are emails, there are blogs, there are content pieces where sometimes the goal is a pulse. The goal is to get something out. We're trying to stay top of mind. We're trying to get that awareness level of your activity. And then there are other pieces of content that you might be looking for a little bit different of a goal. So you might really want people to engage with what you have and provide feedback or ask questions. And then even further down a traditional funnel is where you really want them to convert. You want them to talk to you. You want them to feel that deeper connection. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with using it at a high level. I think in your example, something you could do, which even probably transcribing this conversation and like sifting through it, is take your personality type. And if that's something you want to come through in your messaging because you are such a core component of your business, use that and create light brand guidelines that you'd want to come through in your messaging, and you would pretty quickly remove those skeptical, cynical um, moments that the AI could come up with and throw into your message. And just with that piece, you would sound a little bit more like Rose Odette.
Wonderful. Very good. I love that answer. You say something I thought was so cool and it resonated with me is that you can't scale chaos. And you've worked inside a lot of fast-moving teams, which is another reason I'm so drawn to you, Lauren. And you have such a calming approach to this really crazy world of AI. I love it, and marketing. What's the biggest operational mistake do you think we could make when we try to scale using this technology?
Yeah. I've seen within a few businesses who they are super excited to use AI. They want to automate, they want to leverage these tools that are being put into the marketplace. And we end up having to take 3 or 4 or 5 steps back before we can do all of that because what they want to automate is something that's done differently every time. And so that is a huge hurdle is the processes. Standardizing is key to really being able to leverage these tools because if you're
Can you
not,
give us a use case?
yeah, let's say, oh dear, let's say you wanted to help AI. We were talking about chatbots, or if you're looking at automating something within your inbox. If that is where you're using your judgment a lot, or you have multiple people who something's handled a little bit differently each time that it's done, it's not as easy to set up a system that can run every time a trigger is happened. So,
Well, I was
yeah,
wondering if you could, and I know I'm putting you on a spot,
that's
just tell
okay.
me no, but you are an expert in webinars.
Mhm.
And so could you use a webinar case study for the way that you want to? Because I know I've considered using webinars to scale, but I can
Yeah.
see myself trying to use it but creating chaos because I'm not a webinar expert and I'll just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall. And and so could you give us an example of how you worked inside a webinar team and help them avoid operational mistakes when they're trying to scale using webinars?
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you for teeing that up.
Well, that's your expertise
Yeah,
and that's something that we all value, but we sort of shy away from because maybe I don't know exact. I know a little. I can join a webinar, but I don't know how to do a webinar.
yeah, yeah. And so if you were to implement elements of automation into a webinar process, or you wanted to scale and you wanted to do a bunch of webinars, you still need that fundamental process that you're going to follow where anyone could execute this series of steps and it would nearly guarantee that it would be successful. So um, there's about 100 steps to a successful webinar from ideation all the way through following up at the tail end. And I've been part of teams where I was saying it looks different every time. So they might not send the same amount of promotional emails, or you might not have the brainstorming session to really get down to the fundamentals of the topic that you're discussing. And just those two pieces, if those are shuffled around, you'll see different end results in the quality of the content, in the reach of your audience, and in the people who stick around to listen to what you have to say. And so, talking about the emails, for example. So, if you have a webinar and you want to send 3 emails to promote the event leading up to it, and you can automate some of that, or you can use AI to help with the copy. What you could do is build a a workflow that would, based on the webinar description, draft the 3 emails. But if you didn't know you wanted to send 3 emails, or you didn't have a purpose within each email, then they're all going to sound the same because you could send 3 of the exact same email, or you could send one that is a hook. You could send the second one that describes the speakers that are going to be there. Then the third one could really show them what they're going to get out of attending. And so by having those guidelines, then you can use AI tools to speed up your process and provide the description and get those 3 very unique, very specific emails without having to write them manually, or use AI and you don't have this outline, so you don't really know. And you say, hey, give me emails to promote this event. And then either they sound the same or you have 6 of them and you don't know when to send them. And you can't really test to measure what works.
Very, very true. Great example. Now, in the world of webinars, tell us on a, where are webinars right now as far as effectiveness versus, let's say, a funnel? Well, you can kind of blend a funnel with a webinar,
Mhm.
but can you kind of teach us about the whole webinar marketing idea and what are the alternatives and why might it be a better alternative? And or is the webinar whole idea is that still I mean, I'm sure it is relevant, but how
Yeah,
how does how is it relevant? What's new in the webinar world right now?
yeah. Webinars are a great lever to pull if you want to build trust. So, we're talking about building trust, we're talking about scaling, and very similarly to the podcasts. But what you get is a community experience. So, the attendees often can use a chat amongst themselves. They can ask the speakers questions within the event. And that's a critical component of a webinar that differentiates it from a podcast or a piece of content is that they can interact with the experts or the people who are representing a company. And so as we see more automated content, webinars bring that human element back. So you had a great point of the webinar being a piece of the funnel, and I couldn't agree more because it's never just one thing. It's never just webinars. It's never just your newsletter. It's never just a downloadable resource. It's all of them working together in the same direction that will build that trust. And so I think webinars are a critical piece to building trust and showing that there is a human on the other side of it and most likely an expert in whatever problem you're solving.
So once the webinar is in the can and been it's done and over,
Mhm.
um, are are evergreen webinars is still relevant, or should you just throw them out there on YouTube?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what your strategy looks like. So, how many webinars are you doing? Are you doing a ton of them? And so there's no real reason for someone to go back and watch an old one. Are you bringing in guests that might have different perspectives? Because then I would say an evergreen webinar is important and you can still use that to promote to the people who it would be most relevant to. But then there is a case for having it on YouTube and just out there for people to go watch. And I think that you're not going to lose anything by doing both. So I would recommend having a live webinar where the people who want to interact will. You can have the on demand evergreen webinar where people who maybe couldn't make it can still get the information and see what other people asked and get that webinar feeling. And then still put that recording on YouTube so that the audience that's there and gets their information from YouTube will still see what you shared.
Awesome. And so you mentioned there's 100 steps to a webinar, and if someone was wanting to really create a whole webinar strategy, that's the business that Culver is in, right?
Yeah, that's one of our key offerings is the webinar program management. So we help teams look at their webinar that they want to do and we basically zoom out and look at all 100 steps to make sure that each component is intentional.
Now, do you happen to have a return on investment concept with your offering?
Yes, and I will say it does depend on that bigger picture and how I mentioned earlier that it's never just one thing. And so we've had teams who have seen 10 times because webinars are a really low cost element of your marketing strategy. People who are in this world know that you could spend $100 a day on LinkedIn advertising and you might get a lead. Where a webinar is relatively low cost once you have the foundation in place because you're sending it to people who you've hopefully built trust with. You get
Hmm.
them with you in real time, and then they are engaged with you for a long duration. So they're a high quality lead for really just the time of your team and the guest speakers to get it out there.
And they're talking about their passion.
Yeah,
It's like such a fun thing to do. I'm
yeah,
fascinated by it, as you can tell. Okay, let's move to standardization equals freedom. Most people hear standardization, which is something that people think, oh, that's rigid. But you say it's actually the key to growth. Walk us through that.
yeah. We've covered a few elements of that, but what the most helpful piece of standardizing is so that you can make changes. And I know that sounds contradicting, but if you have a process or you have, I guess, in marketing, if you are able to identify exactly what you're doing, it's a lot easier to see its performance and test it over time by changing individual variables. So that's one piece is being able to change your process. Once you know what it is, you can make changes based on what works. The second piece of it is delegation. If you do something differently every time and all of a sudden you have an intern or you have another team member who wants to help out, you can't really explain it if you do it differently each time. Where if you have something that you can offload and you can get help with, it will really help maximize your efforts and the team's efforts if multiple people can work on one thing.
Yes, I totally get that. And I'm a student of history, so I remember the Industrial Revolution. And one of the things that they taught during that is the making of shirts. And when in the Industrial Revolution, I was taught that when they started making shirts, in the linen and textile factories in England, even though they use child labor, which is horrible. But the standardization of doing the shirts that led to efficiencies, and a lot of people could participate. But also, you could modify color, you could modify
Mhm.
style, and so I resonate with that. And in my book, Built to Charge, standardization is a key module of that, and Bullish on Business, the executive information system, which I have. And it's all about standardization and process. Because as founders and new startups, it's like you really, maybe you've left that corporate world and you're feeling like untethered and you're ready, like a horse that just got out of the, stable and you're raring to go and you feel a little bit adverse because I did when I left IBM. It's like, I don't have to follow your rules. I can do it my way. And it wasn't too long that we decided, and back in those days, we called it best practices. So we created best practices so that we could have a repeatable practice. But you are right. It does equal freedom, even though it might not feel like that for you in the beginning. So I think you're really smart about that. So let's talk about the founder bottleneck problem. How does a company maintain a high touch personal experience without the founder being involved in every single thing?
Yeah, it really ties in everything we talked about. So if you're going to use these tools, make sure that it has your brand built into it in some way. Before, during, after you use it, any of those components will help make sure that it resonates. And then if you are standardizing your processes, it'll be much easier to offload tasks while still maintaining the quality that the founder or the individual business owner would have, because you know that there's an easy to follow process that your your coworker will be able to execute, and then they can step away, the founder can step away and focus on something else.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to relate a comment in my second book, To Grow a Business, which is Charge Like a Bull. I have a module in the software and in my book called the Dynamic Duo. And with the Dynamic Duo, I identify that there's an outside champion and an inside champion truly as a company starts to scale. So you may have that rogue, wonderful salesperson who is out in the field trailblazing, really understanding customer needs, pulling out their pain, and that's all encompassing. But then you have that process systems oriented leader who is back at the ranch, who's with the team, who's developing those strategies. And so sometimes it's the co-founder. And
Yeah.
because just because you don't, and the message I'm trying to add to your wonderful point is maybe it's not you, that crazy like idea guy or gal. Maybe it's your partner. You know, think Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. I
Mhm.
don't think Steve Jobs was your systems guy. I think Wozniak was your systems guy, or Paul Allen and Bill Gates. You know, these dynamic duos, they all have their place. And
Yeah.
usually the dynamics of it is one is out there working with clients and their pain, but the other one is back at the ranch, like I said, really putting it all repeatable, bringing efficiencies to the process. And so, um, and it can really relieve that bottleneck. And it's okay. I think the thing that I had to learn that it was okay. You know, I almost felt like I was betraying my entrepreneurial gene when I introduced process. Isn't that weird? Because I was like,
Yeah.
no, we're renegades. We're leaving the IBM culture behind us and we're going to do everything brand new. But then
Yeah.
I realized we needed to pull it in a little bit. But
Yeah. I
thank you.
love that example. And I think that the dynamic duo is super helpful because there are different personality types too. I am it's much easier for me to look at something and see the individual steps. And it's not as easy for me to go out and identify exactly the pain points or have that creative perspective on like looking at something in a different way, where I think that different people just bring different value to the same problem. So I agree.
Mhm. Yeah, it's always nice. And it's also nice to have somebody to cry on their shoulder when things
Yeah.
don't go so good. Um, let's talk about the context problem. Like context. Maybe we already have. AI outputs feel generic. We did discuss that, and you did talk to us a little bit more about that. I think as far as context, I think that it is worth repeating that we need to remember our audience. You know, who are we speaking to, and what is our goal? I think is your point there. And is this tool, Notebook LM, is it hard to use? You say we can tie a YouTube to it, or we could tie some. Is it kind of point and clicky, or do you have to be a programmer?
No, it is like one, I mean, it contains a chat module. And so it's very similar to the other AI platforms that are out there, and it's extremely user friendly.
Well, I
So
would
it's,
encourage everyone to try that out.
yeah.
So, the next 12 months, let's talk about that. Looking ahead, what's one workflow you have implemented that immediately improved both efficiency and customer experience?
Hmm. I think if I had to recommend to the listeners of something they can implement, I would use the Google Workspace Studio. That has the capability to do a multi-step automation processes. And I believe it was Tim Ferriss in his 4 Hour Work Week book who identified that our inbox and the emails we get are such a time suck from the quality work that we're providing. And so I think I relate to that. It's very easy to keep an eye on your inbox throughout the day and try to stay caught up. But that is also a big it has a big impact on your output. So, in the quality of work that you can do, not only just the attention it takes to maintain an inbox, but you're thinking about it, you're looking at it, it's distracting you from the high value work that you're able to do. And so, using Google Workspace Studio, you can set up a certain timing of receiving a summary of your inbox, and it can identify what is urgent, what needs your attention right away, or if there's just a lot of fluff in there, it can delineate between the promotional emails or if your employee has something and they need something from you, and then setting that up to alert you so then you're not continuously monitoring your inbox. You can check it once or twice a day and still know that everything's taken care of.
How long would it take me to do that?
Uh, Half hour, 30 minutes
What?
maybe.
And it would
Yeah.
save a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Wonderful. Well, that's good. That's a good one. Anything left on your um hit parade that you'd like to share with us before we end our podcast today?
I don't think so. I think the key takeaway, if someone listening to this skips to the end and is like, okay, what do we need to know? Is just maintain your brand or your personal element in the AI tools that you're using. I recommend using them. I think automating things is great, but implementing those systems and maintaining the human piece of it so that you're able to differentiate will definitely have an impact on the quality of relationships that you build.
Awesome, Lauren. Well, I warned you, I fall in love with all my guests, and you're no different. You're a star, and I do appreciate you. And definitely, if you are looking at marketing assistance and guidance, webinars, funnels, campaigns, please seek out Colliver. They are a local Traverse City firm, and they have very cl good, clear understanding of the world that we're in today. And so, this is one of those conversations that should hit right between your eyes because here's the reality. Most businesses don't fail because they lack tools. They fail because they try to scale on a broken foundation. Lauren has made it very clear today you can automate, you cannot automate chaos. You cannot fake authenticity. And you definitely can't build trust with shortcuts, AI shortcuts. If you want to win in this next era of business, you've got to get your operations tight, your message real, and your systems working for you, not against you. Lauren, thank you for bringing real clarity to the space. That's getting more and more confusing every day.
Thank you so much, Rose. It's been lovely to chat with you, and I appreciate you having me on to address this. It's something where I know it might not be a popular opinion when you tell me you're using an AI tool and I ask you, well, is it any good? Is Are you happy with your outputs? And so I appreciate the ability to share some tips on how to make our efficient tools a little bit more appealing to
Well,
our
I've certainly
audience.
taken some notes because I know I'm learning a lot from you. And for everyone listening, if you got value from this, don't just sit on it. Take one idea that Lauren gave you today and implement it immediately, 15 minutes in your inbox if you use Google. And it probably will help you from being distracted, that, oh, there goes a rabbit. I better go chase it in my inbox. That's how real momentum starts, inch by inch. I always say life's a cinch, yard by yard, life is hard. So take that 15 minutes. So this is Rose Odette, and this is Bullish on Business. And we don't just talk about growth, we build it. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.